Ladies and gentlemen, this is your game dev speaking. Today we're going to be making a bit of an advanced AI using Unity's 2022.3.16. It's a bit of an advanced tutorial as we are going to be using the Unity AI package, so make sure you have installed that, and also the animation rigging package, so make sure you have both of them. And this is how it's going to look in the end, at least you can hope. By the way, this footage is actually from one of our games that we are going to release soon. We hope. Okay, so tutorial time. This is our 3D model, and like the most important part of this is basically just the head and arms. These are basically just important for aiming and all that stuff. So yeah, if you have a different type of model, they're still gonna have kind of the same stuff, but this is more of a gist. That's why we are gonna use the animation rigging rather than just aiming at stuff. So first things first, we're gonna get the ground object, basically that area where the AI is supposed to walk, and we're gonna add the NavMesh surface component. Again, I'm telling you, make sure you have the AI package installed. Alright, so we're gonna bake the surface. The blue basically represents the region where your AI component can actually walk. Right, so in the next thing we're gonna add the AI agent, basically the NavMesh agent component to our player, and we're gonna just set the base and all of that. Time to do some programming. So we're gonna make our first script. Let's call it whatever we're gonna call. I'm just gonna call it RKTL, and yeah, let's do some programming. First of all, we're gonna need some components, and listen, you're more than welcome to just copy all the scripts and all of that, but here we are basically defining if our NavMesh is not hostile, then it's gonna basically chase Waypoint. Let's save our script and go back to Unity. Let's drag and drop our script and just define the NavMesh component, and of course our waypoint. We're gonna need a waypoint. Let's create a new game object and let's just call it whatever waypoint, all of that. And let's drag and drop it in the script. Yeah, let's call it waypoint as well, and let's just drag and drop it in the script and let's play. So as you can see, it just basically just goes towards the waypoint, and once it reaches it stops. Let's create a new script called waypoints. What this is basically gonna do is just tell our NavMesh that now it says reach this waypoint, now you have to go to the other waypoint. So once it's triggered, like once it enters a collider, it's basically just we're gonna set the current waypoint to the other waypoint. Of course, for its trigger we are gonna need some rigid body component and box colliders for the AI as itself, and make sure that the rigid body stick is kinematic, alright, or else things gonna be a bit choppy. Of course, we're gonna need a duplicate waypoint, and let's just make sure that the other waypoint is actually the other waypoint. Alright, so the AI moves towards that, then that, then that, and if we just like drag it somewhere across there, it's gonna automatically the AI is gonna choose itself. Time for some more components. Of course, the player, we're gonna need some player, and here is basically just if it's hostile, set destination to the player, right? Like now we're gonna go for the hostile when it is hostile. So this is basically the distance to player. We're gonna change the name of the component later, but if our distance to player is less than some defined distance, we're gonna attack, or else we're just gonna chase. We are gonna set the AI speed to 0 if we are basically attacking, and if else, then well, the speed is our defined speed. Alright, of course the set destination will be to player, not the waypoint when we are hostile, and gizmos is just to visualize the distance required. Do some distance to player and of course speed, and boom, when we turn on is hostile, the AI starts to chase the player. I'm just gonna change the name of the components because the attack distance is gonna be a different distance than the follow distance. Okay. Now it's time to do some aiming. Okay, first of all we're gonna need that animation rigging component. Make sure you have that installed. Now we're gonna get the rig setup and a new rig for the head, and we're gonna do the same for the arms. First of all, in the rig we're gonna use the multi-aim constraint, and we're gonna make a separate target object, basically the aim object. Head will basically aim, and as you can see, it continuously aim but not in the correct axis. We only wanted to aim in the one axis. Now of course it's gonna be different according to you, and yeah, there we go. Now it basically just aims in one axis. The same will go for the arms again. For the arms as well, we'll need just a single axis. So here we go. Oh yeah, the target object is gonna be same for both the aims, right? Like the source object is gonna be the same, the aim constraint. Alright, now if we just and make sure that the constraint object axis is correct, right? Like the head is basically just controlling one axis and the arms are basically going for another axis. That's why it's perfectly aiming. Now we obviously don't want our arms and head to target our player all the time, right? Like when it's not hostile, we obviously just want it to settle down and make sure it's not aiming at anything, right? So we're just gonna make a normal game object, right? Like normal position when it's not hostile, and then when it's not hostile, we're just gonna move the aim, our target aim to the normal aim, right? Like basically it's gonna move the position. So in our script we're just gonna make a few transform: the aim pause, the basically our target, the normal aim, which is of course we just made, and the turn speed. Now in here, as you can see, the aim position will be basically the code here, the vector3.move toward basically just moves our aim position to our normal aim position with some delay in between, basically our turn speed. And we're just gonna copy it all and paste it in when it's hostile. And when it's hostile, we obviously just want our aim position to move towards player, and player the transformed position, and this is how it's gonna look. As you can see, it continuously points towards our player and menaces us. Alright, so yeah, as you can see, both the axes are working perfectly, both the head and the arm. Right, it's time to do some attacks. But first of all, of course, we need an attack distance and a boolean that we can fire. Here's basically the same code, that the distance to player is basically less than our attack distance and we can fire. The boolean is basically just, self-explanatory. So we need a transform for player missiles. Now here's the deal. I have two hands from which player can fire, from the missiles can be fired, right? And the other are just basically the missile components. Okay, so that's why we need this advanced piece of code, this extra piece of code, right? Like basically an integer for randomness between which hand is gonna fire the missile. All right, if you have just a single place to fire, you don't even need this, but I do. All right, so this is of course going to be the rate of fire. The reset fire can fire is equal to be true once we have actually fired. All right, this is just something that I have, like, this is my missile prefab, which with its own particle system, right? This is not that big of a deal. All right, and of course is trigger, capsule collider, rigid body. Make sure you have turned off gravity, and we need a missile script. So missile script basically going to be a real simple script. We are just going to add a force to the rigid body, transform it forward, and a force mode dot impulse with a separate fire force, basically the speed at which the bullet's gonna fire, the missile's gonna fire, and on trigger it's basically gonna explode. And yeah, this is actually where we are gonna define the explosion effect and hit effect and all of that. And this is actually the part where you can define it, like how the player's gonna get hit, or like how the player's gonna get its health deducted, or basically just damage to the player. Alright, and we are obviously gonna destroy the game object after that. Back in Unity, this is our hit effect, like I just got it from particle store. Alright, so we're gonna make a prefab out of it, direct the values to it, of course the rigid body, and we're gonna drag and drop the missile, give it some force, drag and drop the rigid body, give it some force of like this. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm saying -5 because of the axis difference, right? You might have to change it. let's make a pre-prep of the missile itself. Let's relate it from the scene. And in our drone, in our anime AI, we're just gonna, oh yeah, I've basically made the two transforms, right? And the rate of fire. And we're going to change the attack distance to more than the distance required to chase. Alright, here's where the chase distance and attack distance makes sense. So okay, now it's not hostile, and let's make it hostile by checking the trigger is hostile. And boom, it has now started to fire missiles towards us. And I fell off the cliff. Alright, we are basically done with the AI, but here's the problem. Oh yeah, I've changed the mesh. Alright, disable the mesh. Here's the problem with the AI. If say we have a wall, right, like there's a wall between the AI and our player, the AI is gonna not notice it because yeah, it's not up to it, right? Like as you can see, it just fires at us because player is in the range, so it's gonna fire. Like the code is correct, but the AI needs to know. So let's make it know. We are gonna make a boolean that if the player is visible to AI or not, right? And how we're gonna do it? Well, we're gonna do some raycasting, and yeah, I'm gonna explain it. Consider like this is our robot and this is our player, right? Say this is our ray pause, and we're gonna cast a ray, right? And say if there is an object in between, so we're gonna know that yeah, there is an object in between, so move to a different position, and let it's move to a different position. It's gonna cast a ray, and if it's hitting a player, yes, it's in position. So this is how we're just gonna cast a ray. This is a ray cast ray pause dot position. The ray pause dot look at is basically a separate transform, for which like the ray pause is always gonna look at our player, right? Like there is no smoothing in between. Alright, if hit dot collider dot compare tag with player, that basically means it's hitting the player, so visible to player is true, and if it's not hitting the player, visible to player is false. Now we're just gonna say if distance to player is less than and is visible to player, only then we can attack. Let's create a new transform, ray pause, and just drag and drop it here. Let's play again. Oh, and by the way, make sure that you have again baked your NavMesh, alright, or else it's just gonna go over obstacles, alright, it won't care. Right, so let's play. And as you can see, once we get behind the wall, it still chases, right? Like it still makes sure that the AI can actually see the player, right? Yeah, it's gonna continue to shower us with missiles. By the way, in the end, I just wanna say one thing, right? Like when we are making an AI for our player, right? Like for a game, make sure that the primary objective of the AI is not to like stop the player or hinder the player from anything. It's to present good gameplay. Alright, that will be just about it. That's all for now. Peace out.